They are a great feat of ingenuity and make for one of the most awe-inspiring sequences in film. Within Tolkien's pages, we find not only their true use, but also the answer to one of the most common questions: how they were manned. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the beacons of Gondor. While the films show us, quite effectively, Gondor calling for aid with beacons stretching all the way to Edoras, in the books their positioning is different, though their purpose is similar. While we are not told when the beacons were built, we do know that they were not among the earliest methods of communication for the Gondorians. In The Return of the King, Gandalf tells Pippin that in the ancient days of Gondor, they were not needed, for they had the Seeing Stones, the palantir. Now, looking at Gondor's history, we find the earliest need for such beacons could have come as early as 1437 of the Third Age. In that year, Osgiliath is sacked and burned, not by Sauron, but by Castamir the Usurper, in a vicious civil war known as the Kinstrife. In the attack, the Osgiliath Stone, largest and greatest of the Palantir in Middle-earth, is lost in the Anduin. Thus, it would have been sometime after 1437 that the Great Beacons would be constructed, placing it possibly over 1,000 years before the foundation of Rohan. Thus, the Gondorians would resolve to build a series of great beacons atop hills to serve as a warning and a call for aid. These beacon hills would not only stretch across the north of the White Mountains, but also in the south. But first, we'll talk about those in the north. When it comes to their construction, Amon Din is mentioned as being the oldest of the beacons, for it was originally used as an outpost of Minas Tirith. Its purpose was to keep watch over North Ithilien, in case enemies were to attempt crossing from Dagorlad into the realm of Gondor. From there, the beacons would stretch to the west. Next, we have the beacon hill of Eilenach, which lies in the Druidan forest and is the highest point therein. There was also min-rimmon, which completed the original 3 beacons of the north. While there would eventually be 7 such hills, the Gondorians at this time were not concerned with reaching as far as Calenhad, for the population of that realm had already declined, possibly giving us insight that these could have been constructed closer to the Great Plague of 1635 to 1637. The rest of the beacons would be added after the foundation of Rohan: Nardol, Erelas, Calenhad, and Halifirien. Thus, the beacons would extend throughout Anorion and up to the border of Rohan. The final beacon of Halifirien was also the highest of the beacons. This location, also known as Amon Anwar, or Hill of Awe, was for a time the resting place of Elendil. Isildur had buried his father at this location, at the time the center point of Gondor's realm, after his death in the War of the Last Alliance. However, after the foundation of Rohan, this sacred place was no longer in the heart of Gondor, so steward Cirion removed Elendil's tomb and had it placed in Minas Tirith. In Unfinished Tales, we also learn that as Rohan grew in power and Gondor declined, the wardens tasked with manning Amon Anwar were made up entirely of Rohirrim. It is in these pages that we also learn the answer to a burning question brought about by the films themselves. What about the people stationed at these beacons? It's worth noting that while the magnificent sequence from the films depicts these beacons on the White Mountains themselves, in the books they are placed upon tall hills along the mountains. So the ability to scale such heights is not nearly as daunting. In Unfinished Tales, we learn that the beacon wardens were tasked not only with lighting the beacons should the need arise, but they also kept open the great road and path toward the summit of their hill. It goes on to say that these wardens lived in lodges in the trees near the summit, but would not stay long, for unless there was foul weather, they would come and go in turns of duty. As for the southern chain of beacons, we have no record of their locations, names, or construction, though we do know they existed. They would have been used to send word to the numerous southern fiefs such as Lasarnach, Lebanon, Lemedon, Belfalas, and others. Tolkien Gateway points out that given the nature of the northern beacons, and the fact they are 20 to 30 miles apart, there could have been as many as 10 such beacons to stretch along the south of the White Mountains. This also allowing for beacons on the southwestern spur near Dol and Ernil. While we can only guess where these beacons would have been placed, I think this is a great theoretical placement. Now for the actual lighting of the beacons, we are only told of one occurrence, when Gandalf and Pippin are making their way to Gondor. Though Gandalf, upon seeing them, notes, "It is long since the beacons of the north were lit." Thus, there was at least one other time when these beacons were used, though we can only guess when that may have been, or if aid were able to come. While the beacons were effective for quickly communicating to the fiefs and to Rohan that Gondor was in danger, it's worth noting this was not a formal call for aid to the Rohirrim. That would have been the Red Arrow, which would be delivered to the Rohirrim by messenger, signifying that Gondor's need was dire and requesting aid. This arrow would indeed be delivered to Theoden, who was already mustering the Rohirrim for war. Fans will also note the timing is quite different in the books compared to the films. Both the beacons and the arrow are enacted by Denethor himself. While he was no doubt teetering on the edge of madness, he was not foolish, and still moved to protect Gondor by calling for all aid available. Pippin learns of what triggered the lighting of the beacons during his time with Beregond in Minas Tirith. Beregond states, "But if you would know what I think set the beacons ablaze, it was the news that came that eve out of Lebanon. There is a great fleet drawing near to the mouths of Anduin, manned by the Corsairs of Umbar in the south. They have long ceased to fear the might of Gondor, and they have allied them with the enemy, and now make a heavy stroke in his cause. For this attack will draw off much of the help that we look to have from Lebanon and Belfalas, where folk are hardy and numerous. All the more do our thoughts go north to Rohan, and the more glad are we for the tidings of victory that you bring." Thus, the beacons of Gondor would call for aid from not only Rohan, but the many fiefs of the realm. In the pages of The Return of the King, we also learn of the great distance these beacons could be seen from. We are told on a clear night the fire of Eilenach, the second beacon, could be seen from Halifirien, the last beacon. And while it may make for a glorious sight, the population of Gondor's fiefs would no doubt be filled with dread should the night sky be dotted with fire, for they would know in that very moment that war had come. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.